Hello Stampers, this is Dena from pocketfulofstamps.com. Thank you so much for joining me today. What I want to share with you is this fun thank you card. If you like texture, this is definitely a project you're going to want to try. I was inspired to make this card after seeing a card in a recent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator publication, but I didn't have a lot of the stamp images and products to make it exactly like they did. But that's one thing that I love about stamping, being inspired by another artist to create a card that I can make my own. Let me get started and show you how this all comes together. I have pre-cut a lot of my pieces, but I wanted to give you some sizes. The card base itself is Sahara Sand. It's cut 5.5 by 8.5 and scored at 4 1/4 inches, just a regular card size. I also have a piece of mint macaron. This is cut 4 by 5 1/4, and I ran it through the Big Shot in the layered leaves embossing folder. Did that ahead of time. I also have a piece of very vanilla cardstock. This is cut 3 1/4 by 4 1/2. I have a piece of shaded spruce. This was cut 3 by 4, and then I also ran this through the Big Shot with this thank you thinlet. And this is a single thinlet. This is a really fun. I love the size of this thank you. It's a really nice one. And I'll have all the numbers up here for products in just a couple minutes. The last thing I had was actually a couple things here still. I had a little strip of soft sea foam. It's cut in a 1/2 inch strip. And then I have a strip of the vellum cardstock that's just 2 inches, and it can be as long as you want it to be. This was the piece I had laying around. Alright, so the first thing I want to do is stamp my background onto the Very Vanilla. And to do that, I am using mint macaron and Sahara Sand. And I'm using a stamp set called Artisan Textures. This is a really nice background set. It's just background pieces in it. I got them in the wood mount, but these also are available in a clear mount. And I started with this one. I'm going to ink this up in the mint macaron. And what I did is I stamped it one direction here and one direction here. And I didn't worry too much about this middle part. It's going to be kind of covered up a little bit. Then I took this little piece and inked this up in the Sahara Sand. And this I kind of stamped a couple of times. I'm getting a little bit of variation in color here because I'm stamping it twice before I re-ink it each time. Then I also took this little squiggly line and did a few of these kind of in the center. Like that. That's going to be my background. Let me move these out of the way. Okay, the next thing I did was stamp the so much down here, and I stamped on my strip. I started this on another one just because it kind of takes a little bit of time to do this. The stamp set that I'm using for this is the Make a Difference stamp set. This is a really great alphabet set. It's got 2 complete alphabets, one with uppercase and lowercase, and one with all lowercase. And then it's got some other little doodads down here for different things that you can use on your projects. There's a lot of different ways that you can stamp these. Some people like to take and line them all up on the blocks as they're going. I find that I can't get them quite close together, enough together. Get them close. Let's see if I can say this, if I can talk, because words are hard. I find that I can't put the images close enough together when I do them like that. So I like to just stamp them one at a time, which does take a little bit more time, but I really like the way that looks when I do it like that. So as you can see, I started here. I like to start from the back and work my way across, just so I know I have enough space. And you know what? I just inked that up in the mint macaron, which is not a color I want to use. I want to use the shaded spruce for this, so it's going to be nice and dark. So ink that up, and then I can just line it up here where I want it to be. Oops, that's actually a little bit lower than I want it to be, but we'll make that work. It's kind of hard because I'm not, when I'm doing this, a lot of times I'm a little higher up so I can see it better. I'm looking for my S right now. Let's see, this is right side up. There it is. But when I'm sitting here for the video camera, it's hard for me to line things up a little bit because I'm a little bit shorter. You know, it's a short issue. Okay, so there's my little so much, and it's not quite lined up perfectly, but it'll be fine. All right, I'm going to tear this other edge, and I want to add a little bit of texture on here too, so I'm just going to kind of roll this edge a little bit and work that a little bit, and the same thing on this side. Just kind of roll it to add some texture to it. And while I'm working on that, I think I'm going to go back here also with this piece and do the same thing. Kind of roll these edges, these corners just a bit. And if you work it enough, you can kind of split that paper so you'll actually have two layers. And there you can see it's starting to split right there. Gonna work a fingernail under there and pull it apart a little bit, and then you can have a couple different little layers of that. And the same thing on this end. And you could go a lot farther even than I went. I'm just doing just the corner. Let's see if I can split that one. There we go. But just adding a little bit of fraying on those corners just adds another little bit of texture also. All right, the next thing I want to do is punch out a couple of the leaves, and this is our leaf punch. If you haven't seen these before, they actually store flat. I just push this little button down here, and that's going to lock it. But when I'm ready to use it, I unlock it. And I like to work in strips because it's easier for me to hold on to the piece of paper rather than cutting my piece just the size that I need it to be. It's harder to line it up in the punch that way. And I also like to punch upside down. So I'm going to put it in there where I want it to be, flip it over and punch. I can move it down, see where it is, punch it. Okay, the next thing I want to do is attach my, my thank you to my little leaf pieces here. So for that, I'm going to use a little bit of snail adhesive and just add a little bit here. I want to kind of hide the stems behind the letters. Because this is vellum, I don't want to put any adhesive actually on the vellum itself because it'll show through. So if I hide it, or I can hide it here behind the letters, then it won't show. All right, that piece, I want to now layer this onto the front here. And with these kind of pieces, the cutout pieces, I like to just use this it's not 2-way glue, it's the fine tip glue pen. And I can just squeeze a little bit of glue out here. And I'm not going to put any, I will put some a little bit here on the leaves where it's covered by the green paper, but I'm not going to put it on the vellum itself. So I have my glue on there. I can now take this piece really carefully and flip it over, and I'm going to stick it onto my paper here where I want it to go. Just kind of pat it down gently so that glue's holding it. The nice thing about this glue tip, or this glue, is that it's got this really fine little tip here, and there's a needle here in the top of your lid. You just fit that needle right down in there so it always keeps it, so it doesn't get clogged up there in the tip. I like that. Okay, and I've got my little so much here. I'm going to take this piece and tuck that right there. Okay. Rather than putting this straight down on the paper, I thought I would angle it a little. So add some adhesive on the back and layer this onto that piece of mint macaron that I ran through the Lovely Leaves embossing folder. Stick that down there. And actually, you know what? Now that I put that down there, I remember that I wanted this to be straight. So just carefully lift that back up and stick it back down. You can do that if you work quickly. If you take a long time, it's going to be stuck on there pretty good, and it's not going to come out too easily, but I hadn't let it sit there for too long. Next, I want to layer this onto my card front. So I'll fold this in half and add adhesive. Center right up there on the front of my card. Then there was just two more little things I wanted to add on here. The first is just a little sprinkling of Wink of Stella. This is one of my favorite things to do, and you can, if you haven't used this, this is one of my favorite things. If you haven't used this brush before, you can color right onto an image if you want to. It'll add a little bit of sparkle. I like to splash it on, so I just take the lid off and just tap it on my finger, and I'm tapping pretty hard. If you're not getting as much off the tip as you want, you can carefully squeeze a little bit. You want to be gentle because you don't want to get too much in there, then you're going to get a big blob. But now I should be able to get a little bit more off of my tip there. Just kind of splash this around. See if you can see that sparkle on there. I love Wink of Stella. It is one of my very favorite things to use. And the last thing I wanted to add were a few of these basic adhesive backed sequins. These come in a package with 5 different colors. They have adhesive on the back, so they're super easy to use. You just pick one up, and I like to use an X-Acto knife to pick mine up so I can slip underneath the little adhesive dot there, and then I can easily place it on my paper where I want it to go. You can just place these wherever you want them. Just like that. And there you go. Thanks again for joining me for this Card Quickie video. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe to my blog at pocketfulofstamps.com. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel and follow me on Facebook. Until next time, happy stamping!